My feet are killing me. I really do need some new sandals, but there's no way I can afford them. I've just been walking too much this week. I blame my friend Silas. He was the one who suggested that we go to Jerusalem for this big party that was going to go on there to greet the king who was coming to throw out the Romans for us. Well, when I told my wife where I was going to be going, she was not best pleased, should we say. In fact, she wouldn't hear about it at all. Who's going to look after the goat, she said. Well, I tried to explain that this was a momentous occasion and it'd be good to be there, but she wouldn't believe me. Don't blame her. I wouldn't believe me either. Anyhow, Silas, he's always the one with quick thinking. Silas said, I'll be out the back early. So I climbed out the window, and me and Silas were off out of the village before my wife even noticed. You know, there's lots of talk about the wonders of Roman roads. Well, our road to Jerusalem's not one of them. It's just a boulder-strewn path. And there were lots of people on it, pushing and shoving, and people joining from other villages. You know, this was going to be some party. There are also lots of religious fanatics, and they were talking about Elijah and all the prophets and saying how this could be the time for the Messiah. Well, it made me realise I should have paid a little more attention at our religious meetings. Someone said that this prophet or Messiah or whatever he was had come from Nazareth. Nazareth! That flea bit of a place. I'll tell you, the only good thing about Nazareth is leaving it. And this bloke had the right idea, because he'd left it 3 years ago, evidently. Some people started talking about all the things that Jesus had done since he'd left Nazareth. There was even one bloke there who said he'd cured his blindness. So I said, well, how did he do that? He said, well, he spat in his eye and rubbed it in. Well, can't believe that. I think the bloke must have been drinking. Stories like that, though, were flowing thick and fast. All along the route, more and more people from different villages joined us. This was certainly going to be some party. As we entered Jerusalem, Silas and I decided to climb up these steps just out the front of a house so we can get a decent view of everyone coming. And there were hundreds of them pouring in from all directions, and right near the front there was this bloke moving along on this donkey. Well, he didn't look like a king to me, but everyone around was shouting and cutting down palms and spreading them in front of the donkey. It was obvious that they were going towards the temple, so that was the first time I sort of realised this might have something religious to do here. Anyhow, we tried to go with them, but there was just so much pushing and shoving, we decided there was no point. And then we heard some screaming in front, and we thought, well, that'll be the temple guards trying to disperse the crowds. You know, those temple guards, they're worse than the Romans. They're supposed to be one of us, but they do a lot of the Romans' dirty work for them. We found a fountain and sat down and had a drink. And then people from the temple riot joined us, and they were saying how Jesus had gone in and smashed up all the money changers' tables and told them to get out because they were making it a den of thieves. Well, I agree with him there. It's a right rip-off, that place. We stayed the night at a cousin's house. The family said Jesus had told them when they were up at the temple with him that he could knock down the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Seemed all very crazy to me. Anyhow, in the morning we were woken by a lot of shouting in the next room, and we went through, and the serving girl was saying that Jesus had been arrested by the temple guards in the gardens just up the road from them, and they'd taken him to the chief priest. Well, I did wonder how on earth they knew he would be in those gardens at that time, but I suppose they have spies everywhere. Anyhow, it didn't sound too good for Jesus, because if he was at the chief priest, he would certainly get a beating, and they would probably try and find some way to get the Romans to kill him for them. Because the Romans, if there's one thing they're good at, apart from building roads that is killing people. Well, later that day we joined a noisy crowd in the main square of Jerusalem. The Roman governor was up on a platform and he had two people with him, prisoners with him. One was definitely the one I'd seen on the donkey. And people, we couldn't get anywhere near to hear what the governor was saying, but people started shouting, and they're shouting, "Jesus! Jesus! Release him! Jesus!" So we just joined in with them. Then I noticed the temple guards moving around the crowd, and then they were shouting out someone else's name and then calling out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Wasn't clear who they meant, but after a little while that Jesus was taken off the platform and the other bloke was released into the crowd who started cheering him. I didn't want to witness a crucifixion. I've been to one before. They're not nice. So I stayed at the house. I'd said I'd guard it because there have been quite a few robberies lately. I dozed in the shade, but I was woken up when this big pot fell over and nearly broke my foot, smashed on the ground right next to me. I then noticed that the sky was getting very dark. I thought it was going to rain, but it didn't. When the family arrived back, I was treated to all the gory details. That was the end of the story as far as I was concerned. Silas and I decided to start home the next morning, and we were just going through the main gates of Jerusalem when we met a group of women who were extremely excited. They'd been to Jesus' tomb and they said the body was gone. So I said to one of them, "Well, who'd want to steal it?" A very attractive woman looked at me as if I'd crawled out from under a rock and said, "Don't you see? The prophecy has been fulfilled. He is risen from the dead." I still thought the temple guards had pinched it and hidden it somewhere else, but I decided not to say anything. She was very attractive. We were halfway home when we became aware of another man walking with us. He asked if he could join us and I wondered what we'd been talking about. So I said I was surprised that he hadn't heard all about Jesus, this one they're calling the Messiah. So we started talking about events in Jerusalem. He was an interesting talker and, well, the last few miles went a lot quicker than they normally do. Arriving home, and before my wife could start shouting at me, I told her that I brought Silas home and a weary traveller who both needed feeding. Well, that deflected her anger for a bit. And when the food was ready, we gathered around the table, and the stranger said a blessing, and then he took the bread and broke it and offered it to us. I looked at his hands and his face, and I realised he was the man on the donkey. He smiled at us and stood up and, well, vanished. We were astounded. Silas said, "That was Jesus, wasn't it?" I said, yes, it was. He is alive again. The prophecy is true, just as that woman told us. It's amazing. I've never been part of any important event before, and now I was part of Jesus' story. I walked back to Jerusalem to tell his followers. They were excited to hear what had happened on the road, and they told me that it appeared to them too. They told me about what they called Christianity and how they were going to make plans to go out and spread the good news about Jesus all over the place. The journey back to Emmaus was the same old 7 miles, but it didn't seem to matter. I felt very happy. I was excited even. I was just so surprised that a common man like me, lowly Cleopas, had been chosen to meet the risen Jesus. I decided that I should do my bit to spread the news about Jesus, and I'll start as soon as I've soaked my feet.